Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Today we're going to go ahead and review a fragrance that is a little bit more on the rare side. Now before I actually begin, I want to apologize. You're probably going to hear some hissing come on. That is my heater. I apologize for it in advance. You can't really turn it off and I need my place to be warm and it's freezing outside here in New York. So that's it. Today we're going to go ahead and review a fragrance from the house of John Varvatos. It is a fragrance that is actually a little bit rare. Actually, it's very rare now that I come to think of it. It's called John Varvatos Rock Volume Number 1. Here is the presentation that we have for it. It comes in a very, very, very heavy bottle. This right here is metal. It's metal, metallic, very heavy, very sturdy. You're not getting past it. And other than that, it's shaped just like the other John Varvatos fragrances. This basically says, you see the JV here, see the little crown, and there's a noise, see the little crown, you've got like a little guitar, and then right here you've got VST00, right? So, looks very similar on the same, it says on the back, John Varvatos, Rock Volume 1, okay? It comes in this very sturdy and heavy case, basically. So, pops in, says John Varvatos Rock Volume 1, very sturdy, flips off, and this is actually magnetic down here, flips up, and the fragrance stores in here. You kind of flip this over here, and the fragrance stores here. So, I would say, I like the presentation, very sturdy, very good. Now, this fragrance was released in 2009. I'm not sure who the parfumeur is, but I would assume that it's the same one who created the rest of the John Varvatos fragrances, and you'll see why in a bit. Now, the retail price of this is $85. However, I can tell you right now, and it's still listed as in production by John Varvatos. You can actually go to the John Varvatos website, you'll see that it's out of stock. Now, that's a little bit misleading when it says in production. I have yet to see, there are copies of this floating around, and when you see it being sold, even though it's for $85, because it's so rare, I've seen it go as high as like $250. And so, because of the exclusivity of it, expect to see this one priced a lot higher than you'll see other fragrances, especially from this line, right? So, but the retail price for this is $82, right? So with that, let's go ahead and get into the notes. The notes of this fragrance consist of rose, coffee, fig, clary sage, metallic aldehyde, vanilla, leather, coriander, and tobacco. So, what do you get when you smell this scent? When I smell this scent, if you ever smelled any of the other John Varvatos fragrances, it has the same DNA. Most of the John Varvatos fragrances, actually all the ones that I've smelled so far, have this sort of John Varvatos undercurrent of this like leather, this kind of dark type of a tinge to it, and this follows the same suit. The leather note kind of remains through it overall. What John Varvatos Rock Volume 1 or Rock Volume 1 has that the others don't have is a rose type of a scent that does not appear at first. I would say about an hour into it, at least on my skin, is when this rose fragrance or with this rose scent appears. Rose and coffee. I know we have a lot of coffee nuts, and that may be what's contributing to the higher price for this fragrance, but coffee note is very apparent in this as well. So after, when you first spray it, you kind of get the original John Varvatos mixed in with a hint of coffee, and it changes after about an hour. You start getting more of the rose coming into it, a little bit more of the vanilla. The leather takes a little prominent note, so you start getting leather, rose, coffee. It's a very interesting mix and a very nice mix, all kind of hinged on this Varvatos DNA. So it is actually a pretty good scent, and if you were to actually ask me which of the John Varvatos fragrances smell the best, I would have to put this slightly ahead of John Varvatos Vintage. I like Vintage, I think, the best out of them, but this is slightly ahead of John Varvatos Vintage in terms of smell. So if I was to give it, I would say it was probably the best smelling John Varvatos of the John Varvatos line, right? So it's a very nice smelling scent, which is very positive. Spray-wise, I usually go about, I would say like 2 to 4 sprays is generally what I apply with this one. One of the things that this suffers from, if you're familiar with the other John Varvatos fragrances, they tend to be meh on the performance side, not so good performance-wise, and this kind of follows the same suit. I'd say that this definitely starts out stronger than the other John Varvatos fragrances, but it still lasts the same amount, anywhere between 3 and 6 hours, which isn't very good. After about that time, basically, it's going to be gone, even less than a skin scent at that point. But it still is a good fragrance scent for that time. 3 to 6 hours, projection-wise, a little bit below average on projection, and sillage-wise, it does leave a better scent trail than most of the other Varvatos fragrances, but scent trail is still, I would say it's about average for a scent trail for the time being that it's actually there. The good thing about this fragrance is it's a very versatile fragrance. Any age group can wear it, any scenario you can actually wear it in. I think this is a great fragrance for the office, for home, for casual, for a date fragrance. It suits all of those needs fine and can double as a signature scent. So if somebody wanted to buy this and make this their scent, you wouldn't run into people who smelled like you. People would love the scent of you, and it fits those purposes for a signature scent, being that it's highly versatile. Works in any month of the year. Although in the winter, you may not get the projection, or you may not get the performance that you're going to get, but this is definitely still a nice scent that you can actually go ahead and wear for those purposes. So with that said, I took this out with all my fragrances, as with all my fragrances, and went to Times Square and had people smell this. It was wildly popular there. 83 people liked it. Of the people who liked it, they said that it was sexy, that it was manly, and that it had just the right amount of sweetness. This is funny because a bunch of people actually mentioned that fact, that it wasn't too sweet, but it was like the perfect amount of sweetness. And so that's why that comment is in there, and they kind of phrased it a couple different ways. But either way, that was what they said. There were only 5 people who disliked it, and they said that it was weird and weak were the 2 main comments for it. And the people that were neutral were a little bit of a mix, but they were more positive neutral, but I still threw them in the neutral category, right? So, if I'm going to go ahead and rate this scent, I want to be very careful with this, just because this is almost definitely a fragrance that I'll be selling in my first batch. But either way, I would rate this fragrance an 8 out of 10, which is a pretty high rating, but there are some key caveats. I would say if you're looking for a signature scent, definitely get this. Here's the problem with it. You're not going to find this fragrance cheap. You're not going to find it for the $82. If it was $82 at retail, I would highly suggest you buy it, just because I think it's a good fragrance for that price. And it's priced that way just because the bottle's so big for it. It would probably run standard like $60 if it was in the standard sizes. That said, if you're gonna pay, I wouldn't pay double for this. I wouldn't pay over $200 for this. I personally do not think that it's worth that price. Now I'm going to tell you right now, you're probably going to see, I'm still going to do some research on it, but when I sell it, you're probably going to see it around that range. And I realize that's conflicting, but I'm not going to let how much or what I sell fragrances for intrude with what I think. I don't think it's worth over the $82. So, plain and simple, I don't think it's worth over it. I think it's still, because of the fact that it lacks performance, and ultimately, you know, it is a John Varvatos fragrance, and it still is of that line. I cannot justify paying way more for this than I would the others. Collector's purposes wise, that's a different story, and that's really what you're paying for in the price. You're paying for a rare, I guess you could say, coffee rose fragrance that is harder to find, and it's more of a collector's edition. So that's why I would say if you're more interested in having the fragrance as part of your collection, then I would definitely say so. But if you're looking for it strictly for, you know, an actual wearing scent and going through, I don't think that it's worth the price that it's going for now. I think it's worth the price that it retails for, but not above. All right. So yes, it's very signature worthy fragrance, very versatile, and works for those occasions that I mentioned earlier. Don't get it if you are stuck on needing something that has excellent performance. This is not going to be your fragrance, and it doesn't really have that monster performance on my skin. Okay? So if you have any questions whatsoever, please feel free, send me a message. Whew, arm's getting a little bit tired on this one. Send me a message, leave me a note, do whatever you got to do. Thank you, take care of yourselves, and have a great day.